Alright, Department of Education Acquisition Regulations. 3401. Scope of part. The part established with the Department of Education Acquisition Regulation for the Education Acquisition Regulation, or Edar, for the codification of the publication policy pursued by the Department with the implement supplement with the Federal Acquisition Regulation, subpart 34011, purpose, authority, issuance, applicability 104, Federal Acquisition Regulation, Education, acquisition regulation, all the department contracts defined in FAR's Part 2, especially when expressly excluded with the education acquisition regulation or supplemented federal acquisition regulation and incorporated together with the federal acquisition regulation department policy pursued with the contract clause, solicitation provisions, forms, the government of the contract process with the otherwise control of the relationship between agencies include subdivision organizations, contractor, prospective contractor, statute 20 U.S. Standard Code 1018A provides performance-based organization procurement authority flexibility associated sections A through L of this statute. 34013, Agency Acquisition Regulation, Publication Codification, the Education Acquisition Regulation, issue Chapter 34, Title 48 CFR, Federal Acquisition Regulation, numbering illustration FARS 1105, to apply with the Education Acquisition Regulation numbers in accordance with the FARS regulation numbering system. Education Acquisition will include Parts 34 prior to its corresponding FARS part citation. FARS 251082 would have the corresponding education regulation text numbered Education Regulation 34251082 supplemental material for which no counterpart of the Federal Acquisition Regulation codified beginning with it 70 with the case successive text and subsections will be numbered in 70 series. Supplemental sections and subsections will appear in close corresponding FARS citations. FARS subpart 16.4 may be augmented with the Education Regulation by citing Education Regulation 34.16.470. FARS 16.403 may be augmented with the Education Regulation by citing Education Regulation 34.16.403.70. Note these citations are illustrative purposes of the only not actually appear with the published EdCard, for example. Guidance with unique organization headed of the contracting authority contained with the active the acronym directly perceived with the site of the following active the acronym Federal Student Aid 34014 deviations individual deviations 403 individual deviations of the FAR education regulations must be approved by the senior procurement executive. 3401404 class deviation of FARs or education regulations must be approved by the chief acquisition officer. 34016 of Career Development Authority Responsibility General. 601 Contracting Authority is vested Secretary delegated of the Chief Acquisition Officer. Secretary of the delegated contracting or authority to Senior Procurement Executive, giving the Senior Procurement Executive broad authority to perform functions of dealing with the management direction entire of the department procurement system, including the implementation of unique procurement policy regulations standing with the limited extent with the authority excessive the delegation set forth with the respective memorandums of the delegation. 3401602 with the ratification 23 ratification of unauthorized commitments. Definitions of the subpart of the commitment include the issuance of the letter with the intent with the augmented with the pre-vendorship with the equipment with the promise with the appearance with the commitment with the contract modification or order will or may be awarded policy. Corporate is not bound with the agreements with the contract with or contractual commitments made to with the prospective contractor by individual who do not have the delegated contractor authority with the contracting officer with the acting with excessive limited delegated authority unauthorized commitments do not allow appropriate process of the expenditure of the government funds. Consequently, the government may not be able to ratify with the certain actions putting in with the contractor risk with the taking with the direction of federal office of or then contracting officer. CFARS 1602 government employees responsible for the unauthorized commitments subject to the disciplinary action. The head contractor authority must review, sign, and reject all ratification requests except for the chief of the contracting officer with the authorized review, sign, and reject of the ratification requests unauthorized commitments of up to $25,000. 3401604 70. Contract clause. Contracting officers must insert the clause substantially caused of 3452 201 70. Contractor officer representative in all solicitation contracts with the contracting officer representative will be or is appointed to. Definitions and words and terms. 3402 for the definitions. 101 definitions. Chief of the Contracting Officer, or COCO, means of the official meaning of the Contracting Officer for the Contractor Acquisition Management (CAM), and or FSA Acquisitions Manager of the Group is award of the Administrator of the Contract Principal Office of the Department CO of the definition of the Head Contracting Authority HC of the section. Department or ED means for the U.S. Department of Education. Head of the Contracting Agency or HCA means for the official of the department who is responsible for the managing acquisition organization, usually hold unlimited procurement authority. Executive Director, Federal Student Aid Acquisition with the head contracting authority over the FSA with the Director of the Contractor Acquisition Management is the head contracting authority for all the department programs and all boards, commissions, with the Council of the Management Control of the Department. Performance-based organization or PBO office of the department is as mandated with the Public Law 105-244. Curate Federal Student Assistance Aid and programs reporting Congress for the annual basis that was referred to as Federal Student Aid. Acquiring activity means the principal officer for the charter of the meeting of the supporting mission and delivering performance requiring activity responsible for the obtaining funding of the developing program objectives. Acquiring activity may also be the organizational unit submitted with a written requirement statement of the need of the service required by the contract. Securing procurement executive with the SPE means of the single agency official appointed with such head of the agency of delegated broad responsible for the acquisition function, including issuing agency acquisition policy, reporting on the acquisition agents wise. The procurement executive also is the official of one of the levels above the contracting officer when the head contracting authority is acting on the contractor office. Sir, subpart 34022 with the definition clause, contract clause, the contractor office must clause with 3452202 with the one, the definition department over the education, also listing contract clause of the FAR 52201 is required. Improper business practice, personal conflicts of interest. Alright, 3403, safeguards of the violation, possible violations 1047, the senior procurement executive of the agency for the purpose of the FARS 31047, D2B, subcard 34032, contractor gratitudes to the government personnel, 203, reporting suspected violation, gratitudes cause, with the suspected violation, gratitude cause for the FARS 552-203, must be reported with the head contracting authority, written detail of the circumstance with the headquarter authority, evaluate with the report assistant with the designated agency ethics official, officer of the head contracting officer with their authority to determine the violation may have occurred for the head contracting authority, refers to the report of the senior procurement executive for the disposition of the treatment of the violation, senior procurement executive 204, agency with head designed for the purpose of FARS 3204, subpart 34033 for the report of suspected antitrust violation 301 general, and the Department of Personnel have evidence of suspected antitrust violation acquisition must report evidence to with the head contracting authority office of the general counsel for the referral of the attorney general, provide a copy of the evidence senior procurement executive. 34034 contingency favor the 405 misrepresentation violation covenant with against the contingent fees. Even the Department of Personnel who suspect the evidence attempted the actual extra for the improper influence misrepresented with a contingent fee arrangement or violation covenant against the contingent fee must report the material promptly in accordance with the procedure 3403203 34036, contract government employee organization owned controlled by them, exemption, senior procurement executive, the agency head designated with the purpose of FARS 3602, support 34037, avoiding residing contracts, 704, policy, senior procurement executive, the agency head designated with the purpose of FARS 3704, 3403705, procedure for the reporting, senior procurement executive, the agency head design purpose of FARS 3705, 34039, whistleblower protection for contract employees, procedure investigation complaints 905, senior procurement executive agency with the head of design designee for the purpose of FARS 3905, 905, 3403, 906, remedies, senior procurement executive agency head designee with the purpose of FARS 3906. Administrative information matters. Scope of the part. One definition federal record is defined in Title 44 U.S. Code 3301. Includes all of the recorded information regardless Form characteristics being received with the department known with the federal law and with the connection of the transaction public business for the purpose to provide for preservation of the department or the legitimate success of the evidence of organization function policy with the decision of the procedure of operation of the activity of the U.S. government comes with the information value of the data in them. Record inventory meaning with the descriptive listing with each federal record system of the contract creates as received with the maintain with the performance of the contract together with the indication, location, retention, and custodian, volume or other pertinent data. 3404 safeguarding classifying information within any industries. 470 contracting security vetting requirements. 3404 contracting clause. The contracting officers must include the clause 3452 contractor secure vetting requirements and solicitation contractor anticipate for the contractor employee will have the access of the priority with the sense of the department including information control of unclassified information is defined till 32 CFR 2000-24H. Department Information Technology System Contractor Systems operative with the Department of Data interface with the Department of Facility Space and perform the duties of the school in a location where the children are present. 34047, the contractor record retention. 710 for the contractor office of the record management responsibility. Upon notification of the contractor, any unlawful the action of the removal, the defacing, alteration, or destruction of federal records, including the form of the mutilation of the contractor officer must notify with acquiring activity. Department of Records office the head contracting authority within one business day. 34047, the 70 contract clause. Contract officer must insert with the 3452-2047 the records management also listen contracts with the contractor will receive the create will work with, otherwise handle the record of the defined Title 42 U.S. Standard Code 3301A for the regardless of the medium in which records exist. 34048 government contact file with the 804 close out with the contract files. 8045 procedure for the closing out of the contract files. Contractor have to provide written affirmation that the contractor has transferred all of the federal records of the contractor created, receive the maintained with the performance on the contract of federal government. The contractor has not yet retained a copy of the federal record contained with the information covered in the Title 32 CFR Part 2002, or that is generally protected with the public disclosure about the Examination of Freedom of Information Act with the exemption purpose of the Freedom of Information Act or of the information that exclusively implies exemption for interest of the contractor. Publicizing contractor actions. 34052 synopsis proposed contract actions. 202 exemption. The federal student aid with the issue with a synopsis proposed with the firm to be solicited previously provided with the modular system of the contract contained with the cost and scale of the performance goal of the contractor meets with these goals. 3405203 with the publicizing response time. The FSA with the notwithstanding with the provision with the file with the bid with the proposal with the due date with 30 days permitted with the issue with the synopsis with the acquisition for the non-commercial items and with the time permits with the bid for purposes of the due date with the afford with the potential offers responsible at the time they respond foster with the quality of submission should be established. 205 special situations magisterially previously awarded with the federal student aid with the must satisfy with the publication requirements of the solicitor for the competitive awards with the module of the previously award system publishing notice of the intent with the government might appointed with entry with not less than 30 days before issuing solicitation on the notice with not required for the contractor who is to be submitted with the solicitor submitted with an offer previously provided with the module for the system under the contract contains costs with the schedule of the performance goals and the contract must meet with these goals. 3405207 the preparation transmittal synopsis general format with a description of the federal student aid within phase of one of the two-phase sources selection described in 3415-3027 the D with the contractor officer must publish with the notice of the accordance with FAR subpart 5.2 with except for the notice must include the only following notification procurement is conducted with the specified specific procedures including 3415-302 with the 70 general notice scope of the procurement that provides sufficient information for the sort of the make informed business the decisions regarding of the case participate in the procurement description on the basis of the potential source to be selected to submit with the offers and second phase with the description of information required with the submit with the request information made separate with the notes any other information for the contract officer that deems appropriate. Modular contracting federal student aid with the modular contracting authority is being utilized with the notice of the invite with the comment support with the if believed with the modular contracting is not suited with the requirement being procured. 3405-270, the notice of the perform market survey, sole source of the anticipated variation of the notice of the proposed course of the correct action with a detail with enough to permit the submission of the meaningful response with a subsequent evaluation response with the federal government concept with the acceptable market survey. Notice must include a clear statement that apply with the procured and capability explained with the contract or any other factor relevant to those requirements. A statement of responsible for the submitting the proposal ability with the quotation must be considered. Name, business address, telephone, and phone number of the contracting officer, justification, sole source, and identity of the source. 34055. Paid advertisements. 3405502. Authority to authority approve of the publication of the partially paid advertisement in newspapers delegated with the head contracting authority. Competition requirements. 3406001, applicability of the federal student aid with the part does not apply with the perceived contracts award based on the full open competition when the condition of the successful system module set forth in 341770 utilized. 34063 with the other than full open competition with the unusual compelling urgency. 34022 with the senior procurement executive agency with the design with the purpose of FAR 6302 with the 2G12 or 2D2 senior procurement executive of the agency citizenry with the purpose of FARS 302 with a 2D22, 3406, 3002 with a 5 with the authorized required statute with the authorized citation 20 United States Code 1018A with a non-competitive award success of the module system permitted with the conditions of 341770 or minute. Subpart 34065 with the advocates for the competition requirement 501, competition advocate for the Department of Deputy Director for the Contractor Acquisition Management. 3407, the acquisition plan with the 3407103 acquisition head responsible leasing procurement executive agency head designee with the purpose of FAR 7103. Part 3408 required special sources, supplies, and services. 34088 with the acquisition printing related supplies. 3408871 paperwork reduction contractor office must insert with the club. 345220872 paperwork reduction act and all solicitation contracts in which the contractor develop the forms of the document for public use. 3409 contractor qualifications, 3409 department suspension eligibility scope, 400 scope of the subpart implements FAR subpart 9 forward a detailing policy particularly given to the department and suspension organization individual will participate with the education of the department, subcontracts and subcontracts. 401 applicability to the subpart part applied with the procurement of the department. Suspension of the action if initiated with the employment of the education of the department. Subpart does not apply with the non-procurement of the department and suspensions. 3409403 definitions. Senior procurement executive with the debarring official, suspending official with the defining with the FARS 9403 with the designated agency official with the authorized to make the decisions required in the FARS 9406 and 407. 3409, 406 Department, 3409, 406 perceive the decision-making power of the contractor proposal of the department may submit it in person with the writing with the respective through a representative information augmentation of the opposition proposal of the department with the contractor must submit additional information within 30 days with the receipt of the notice for the proposal with the department with described in the FARS 9463C. In actions made upon conviction with the civil judgment of the contractor submission of the opposition range with a genuine dispute over the facts of the material of the proposal with the department with the contractor may request the fact finding conflict with the department official with the determined that there is genuine dispute with the material fact the departing official will conduct fact finding with the base of the decision according with the FARS 94063B2 with an ND through 5 3409 407 the suspension 34094073 procedure for the decision made with the contractor spent with the claim for the FARS 9407 the may submit with an in-person with the writing of through the representative of the information augmentation or an argument in opposition with the suspension of the contractor with the must submit with the information augmentation within 30 days with the receipt of the notice of the suspension described in the FARS with 94073C. Actions not based upon the indictment with the contractor submission opposition rates of the raising of the genuine dispute with over the facts of material with the suspension with the no determination has been made with the basis of the Department of Justice advised substantial interest for the government over the pending contemplated legal proceedings based on the same fact that the suspension will prejudice if the contractor may require the fact-finding ref conference. The suspended official will conduct the fact-finding based on the decision according with the FARS 94073B2 and D and E. Support 34095 of the organizational consultant with conflicts of the interest. Actability 502 supports all of the education department contracts, civil contracts with other federal agencies. However, there is support part or contract with the Small Business Administration over the Part AA program. 503, waive with the head contracting authority designated with the official of the May with the general rule procedure for the FAR subpart 9.5 or of this subpart. 506, proceed with the inspect with the potential actual conflict with the interest that cannot be avoided, neutralized, mitigated before award, proceed with the contractor not eligible for the award if the potential actual conflict interest for the identified after the award effects cannot be avoided with the neutralized, mitigated. The educational department will determine the contract unless the head contracting authority deems continue performed for the best interest of the federal government. The head contracting authority designated with the official of the conduct with a review that makes final decision for as 9056 B and C. 507, the solicitation provision contract clause. 507, the one solicitation provisions. Contractor office must ensure with the provision 3452-2097 the conflict of interest certification all solicitations with the services above simplified acquisition threshold. 3409-5072 contractor clause. Contractor office may ensure with the clause 3452-2009-71 conflict of interest all contracts of the service above the simplified acquisition threshold. 3412, the acquisition of commercial product with commercial services. 3412, special requirements to acquisition commercial product with commercial services. 203, proceed with the solicitation evaluation awards prescribed. As specified in 3413-003, for the specified the acquisition proceed with the commercial product with commercial services or base may be used without any of the regard to any of the dollar time frame limitations described in the FAR subpart 13.5 with the federal student aid used for its purposes. 3412-3, solicitation provision contract clause for the acquisition commercial product with commercial services. 301, solicitation provision contract clause for the acquisition commercial product with commercial services. F1, this clause 3452-224-70 would have an authorized inclusion of the acquisition commercial product with commercial service referred to 3424-70. Provisions will leave the use of the clause 2 with a reserve. 3412-302 with the tailored provision clause for the acquisition commercial product with commercial service. The head contracting authority authorized to approve of the waiver of the clause with the FAR 12-302 achieve with approve of the waiver of the even the individual contract with the class of contracts for a specific item with the author approve of the waiver of the supporting documentation must be incorporated into the contract file. 3413 simplified acquisition procedure. 3413-000 scope. 3413-003 policy with the federal student aid may simplified acquisition proceed with the commercial item with regard to the dollar and with the time frame limitations described in the FAR 13.5. Federal student aid may be with the simplified acquisition proceed with the non-commercial with the $1 million acquisition set aside with small business pursuant to 3419-502. Support 3413-3 simple acquisition method. 3413-303 blanket purchase agreement. 3413-303-5 purchase of the blanket purchase agreement. Individual purchase of the blanket purchase agreement with a commercial item may exceed the simplified acquisition threshold, but it shall not exceed the threshold for the test program for certain commercial items in FAR 13500A. 1314 sealing the bid. 1314-4 opening bid and awarded contract. 1314-407 the mistakes on the bid. 1314-407 the other mistake with the discovered before the award. Authority delegated with the head contracting authority to make the determination for 14-407 the 3A through D. And that was 3415 contract by negotiation. 3415-2 with the solicitation receipt of the proposal information. 3415-209 solicitation provision contract clause Freedom of Information Act Title 5 U.S. Standard Code 552 may require the Department of Education the release of the data offer a proposal that even if the offer is identified with the data with the restrict with the term of the provision as far as 52-215-1E solicitation provision 3452-215-70 release of the restricted data inform with the officer of the Department of Education with the required with the concern leave the restricted data with the Freedom of Information Act Executive Order 12600 contract officer with the messenger with the 3452-215-70 all solicitations include the reference for 52-215-1 instructor officer with the competitive acquisition 3415-3 source of selection 302 source of selection rejection 302-72 phase source selection using the federal student aid and may utilize the two-phase for the solicitor officer with the source of the award contract officer can choose the optional method of solicitation when the deemed to have of this federal federal student aid meeting of the purchase blanket offer phasing 1 Contractor officer must publish with the notice of according to the fire with Part 5.2 with except for the notice, the must include the limitation information submitted within 3405.207. The information submitted with the officer of the H officer must submit with the basic information submitted of the qualification provided with the concepts approach with the cost likely to be associated with the approach of the past performance together with the additional information required for the contractor officer selection of the participation. Second phase of the contractor officer must select with the officer of the eligible to participate in the second phase of the process. Contracting officer must limit the number of selected officers for the number of shorts of the contracting officer for the determined for the appropriate best interests of the federal government. Phase 2 of the contracting officer must conduct the second phase of the source of the selection consistent with the FAR's support 5.15.2 and the 15.3 with except for the provided by 3405.200. The only short for the selected for the first phase will be eligible to participate in the second phase. Subpart 34.15.6 for the unsolicited proposal. 34.15.605 the content of unsolicited proposal. Each unsolicited proposal must contain the following certification. Unsolicited proposal certification with the officer certified with the best knowledge of the belief. Proposal having not been prepared with the federal government supervision. Method of the approach of the proposal were developed with the officer. Any contact employee with the Department of Education has been limited to the appropriate advanced guide set forth in 15.604. No prior commitments to review the department employees regarding acceptance of the proposal, the date, organization, name, and the title of the certification must be signed with a reasonable person authorized to enter the contract on behalf of the organization. 34.15.606 with the agency proceed with the head B with the head contracting authority designated with the contact point with the coordinator of the receipt with the control of the handling of the unsolicited proposals. 2. Officer of the offers must direct with the unsolicited proposal of the head contracting authority. 34.16, the type of the contracts. 34.16.3, cost reimbursement contract. 303, cost sharing contract with the application call for the not reimbursed with the cost sharing contract which may not be charged with the federal government under any of the other agreement with the contract or better cooperative with the agreement or with the other agreement. 30.07, the contractor call for the cause of the FARS. 52 with the 216 with the 7, the allowable cost payment with the contract with the hospital with the contract note that must modify with the call with the deleting of the words. Federal Acquisition Regulation from subpart 31.2 with the paragraph 8 substitute with the Intel 45 CFR part 72 with appendix 9. Contract of officers must ensure with the call with the 34.52.216.7 the additional call for the broad principle of the solicitation result with the cost reimbursement contract with the non-profit organization or within the educational institute with the hospital with the organization live within Title 2 CFR part 200 subpart E. 34.16 34.16.4 incentive of the contract 402 with the application predetermined formula type incentive of the 402 with the 2 performance and some of the award contracting may be with the performance paid with the contract task to with 34.16.400 with the definition of the award type contract, the implementation guidelines 34.16.470 award type contracting. Definition of award type contracting is meant for the base of the predetermined plan with the contract with the extent of the contract with the superior performance due with the contract with the substandard with its poor performance. Applicability of the contract officer may authorize an award and some of the contract with the acquisition qualified with the contract performance of the critical with the high important nature of the basic contract with the may extend with the base of the federal government determination excellent. Contractor performed additional performance periods of the performance referred to the section of the award terms available the possible award of the contracted award as for the award each of the additional period of the performance immediately followed with the period of performance of the which an additional of the term was granted with the contractor maintenance of the basis of the award of the performance federal government with the term of the contractor performance due with the reflect the level of performance described with the award term plan. Award term periods may only be the basis of the evaluated quality with the performance of the contract made with the team of the contract with the justification of the award of the award term period using award term plan that does not accept the contract with the requirements of FAR 17.207 and restrict with the performance due diligence required with the exceeding contract term and approved with the contracting officer must justify the use of the award term and some of the contract in writing the award term planning. Approval office official will be appointed with the head contracting authority to see with the federal government unilaterally makes all the decisions regarding award term evaluation points, methodology, calculating points, the degree of the contractor success, the award termination, limitations, award period that may be earned during the base of the period performance of each of the option period except for the last option period. Award term periods may not be earned during the final option of the year of any of the contract award term periods that may not exceed 12 months. Potential award term periods will be price evaluated consider the initial contract selection process. Implementation extension of the review of the contract terms and award term contingent upon with the continuing with the need with the supply and service available to fund with the award term that may be canceled prior to the start of the period of performance. At no cost of the federal government there is no contingent with the need with available to fund with the extent of the production contract term for the affected by bilateral contract modification of award term period with the added curve of the period for which the award term was granted. The award term period effectively move option period with the later contract performance period, with the contractor shall have the right to decline an award of the award term period. Contractor loses the ability to earn the additional award terms if the earned with the award term period is declined. 5. Change of the contract award term plan must be mutually agreed upon. Clause within the clause substantially same as the clause 34, 52, 216, 71. Award term and solicitation result of the contract award and sum of the contract anticipated. 3416 indefinitely with delivery contracts. 505 ordering task order delivery order ombudsman competition or advocate of the contracting entity shall act as a task order of the delivery order of the contract ombudsman for the purpose of FAR 16,505B8. 3416.6 for the time and material labor and letter contracts. Letter contracts 603, 6033. Limitations. Head contracting authority to sign a letter contract with a contracting officer, senior procurement executive at the time of the determination FAR 16,603.3. Okay, waiting on this. We're going to cut the tape there at 30 minutes.